Hey, Bankless Nation. Today we are going to meet TracerDAO. TracerDAO is a brand new DAO on the scene focusing on financial products. You taking a lot of the risk management tools that we know in TradFi, but putting them in DeFi and making them much more scalable, much more permissionless. And the genesis story of TracerDAO is actually really, really interesting. Rather than taking a gradual decentralization approach, TracerDAO took a day one decentralization approach. Patrick tells a pretty cool story about how TracerDAO came to be. Slight disclaimer, Ryan and I have a governance proposal in TracerDAO to become advisors. That proposal has not passed. We don't know if it'll pass, but that governance proposal does exist. So there's that disclaimer. We're going to go ahead and get right into the show. But first, a moment to talk about some of these fantastic sponsors that make the show possible. Bankless is proud to be supported by UNISWAP. UNISWAP is a new paradigm in asset exchange infrastructure. Instead of a cumbersome order book system where trades are matched with other humans, UNISWAP is an autonomous piece of software on Ethereum, which is what Ryan and I call a money robot. No human counterparties or centralized intermediaries, just autonomous code on Ethereum. Input the token you want to sell and receive the token you want to buy. Something brand new in the Uniswap ecosystem is the Uniswap Grants program is now accepting applications for grants. We have been saying this for a while and we'll say it again. DAOs have money and they are in need of labor. If you think that you have something to contribute to the Uniswap DAO, apply for a grant to Uniswap. Just look at the size of the Uniswap treasury. It's almost $3 billion. This mountain of capital is looking for labor. Do you have something of value to contribute to the Uniswap DAO? No matter how big or small your idea is, you can apply for a uni grant at unigrants.org and help steer Uniswap in the direction that you think it should go. That's exactly what we did to get Uniswap to be a sponsor for Bankless, and you can do the same for your project. Thank you, Uniswap, for sponsoring Bankless. The era of proof of stake is upon us. Proof of stake systems like Ethereum, Terra, and Solana allow the industry to move away from the hot, loud, and wasteful proof of work systems and return back to a cottage industry of individual stakers and individual validators. And that is what we need to make this industry stay decentralized. Individuals must play their part in crypto network validation. And that is what LIDO is here to do. LIDO makes staking accessible to everyone at the click of a button. By delegating your stake to LIDO's network of nodes, you can access the yield offered by proof-of-stake systems and claim your share of the network transaction rewards. Do you have 32 ETH and want to stake it to Ethereum, but running a node sounds intimidating? Or maybe you have less than 32 ETH and you need to pool your ETH with others so you can access staking yields. LIDO offers a solution for both. Simply go to lido.fi, choose which assets you want to stake, and deposit them to the LIDO validating network. LIDO is working to make sure proof of stake stays as decentralized as possible, and is committed to decentralizing its own validating network to eventually become a completely permissionless protocol. So if you want to stake your ETH, Terra, or Sol and get liquidity on your stake, go to lido.fi to get started. All right, Bankless Nation, I'm here with Patrick McNab, who is a core contributor to the TracerDAO. TracerDAO is one of the newer DAOs on the scene, and they have an impressive resume of some products that we are going to go through with Patrick here today. But first, Patrick, zooming all the way back out, what is TracerDAO?
Thanks very much for having me on, David, and I'm very glad you asked. So TracerDAO, what we're building is a piece of derivative infrastructure that will enable people to manage risk. So where we've started with TracerDAO is building an entirely new derivative primitive called a perpetual pool. So for those that may be aware of derivatives and perpetual swaps, the perpetual pool itself is an upgrade in a sense in terms of the experience that people have when trading a derivative. There's no margin accounts. There's no liquidations associated. There's effectively no barrier to entry when engaging in these derivative contracts. Users can come into the perpetual pool contracts and they can mint either a short or long leveraged token, whether it be for a BTC, USD market, or any market that has an Oracle price feed. So we've recently launched Perpetual Pools in the last couple of weeks, and we've seen some great initial pickup on the Arbitrum network. There's some slight teething issues as everyone's experiencing in migrating across. It's something that's very new and very experimental, but so far so good, and we're really excited to keep building out the product.
Okay, so Perpetual Pools is the second product out of TracerDAO, the first being Perpetual Swaps. Is this meant to replace the original product, or are these two different products going in two different directions?
Sure. So it's actually our first product, Perpetual Pool.
Okay.
It's the first one that we've launched. We've written some literature about perpetual swaps before, and we were initially going to launch them first, but we saw a massive opportunity with perpetual pools in abstracting out that liquidation piece, that margin account piece, and creating these leverage tokens, or tokens now that can be used within the DeFi economy. So right now, we will, at least for the next few months, be fully focused on continuing to build and iterate on perpetual pools. Our product that we launched 2 weeks ago was a great initial first step into the market, but there's many efficiencies that we might be able to talk about a bit later that we're going to be building on with perpetual pools. We certainly do plan on offering a perpetual swap offering, and Tracer as a DAO and as a piece of derivative infrastructure, we will be launching more and more risk management contracts that enable people to build on top of them, as well as just meaningfully manage their risk in both a digital and a real world environment. So perpetual swaps are to come, but the first focus and something we're going to keep iterating on is perpetual pools.
Okay, so I see this conversation going down two different paths. I definitely want to get into perpetual pools and why it's such a cool DeFi primitive unlock. We like DeFi primitives when something is like something that can only be created with DeFi. That's definitely something worth paying attention to. But first, I want to definitely drill down the nature of TracerDAO, right? Because TracerDAO is a DAO for hosting many, many, many products, and perpetual pools are the first product. But correct me if I'm wrong, but the vision of TracerDAO is to, like you said, offer a suite of financial products, risk management products. But can you kind of explain some of the core underlying components of what makes TracerDAO, whether that be actual code or perhaps just a set of values and goals?
Absolutely. So there's sort of two pieces to that, I suppose, which is the values piece, and then the second piece is how we're then achieving it through the product, which is TracerDAO. So with respect to sort of where we've come from with Tracer and where we're going to continue to be going is a few years ago, a co-founder, Ash, and I, we set out to try and build an agricultural microfinancing solution, which enabled agricultural producers, say they were farming a paddock of wheat, to fractionalize that paddock of wheat and on-sell that risk to a secondary market such that the farmer could continually grow and, again, manage that risk piece. In going through that process, we learned all about smart contracts, about oracles, got heavily involved within the Chainlink network, building out on that side of the puzzle, that piece of infrastructure, and inevitably became more and more aware of decentralized finance. So where we're going to continue to take Tracer is to provide a broad suite of financial contracts that enable people to manage whatever risk they can find within the economy. So there's sort of many risks that can be found right now within the decentralized finance economy, whether it be just simple token risk. You don't want to experience the volatility of a coin that you might be purchasing into. Therefore, you're going to take a hedge position to try and manage some of that volatility risk. You might be yield farming. You might be earning an interest rate, and you want to lock in that interest rate. So you want to manage that interest rate risk. Again, there's many of these risks that have yet to have been fully managed within the decentralized finance economy. But Tracer as a vehicle, it's certainly not going to be focused or be insular to decentralized finance and the building blocks right now that we're seeing. With the help of oracles, we're hoping that we can take Tracer to real world market economies as well in managing environmental risk, for example. Markets we're really interested in are water markets, where we can enable people to, through oracle price feeds, connect up to water derivative markets and manage their consumption to water, like agricultural producers. Again, these are markets all around the world, but there's no sophisticated infrastructure to enable people to trade within them. So wherever there exists risk within the economy, we are hoping that Tracer can be a vehicle that can service people that experience that risk. And so that's the values piece and sort of where we're heading. How we're achieving that is through TracerDAO and the Tracer Factory. So you may have experienced the factory contract style setup within DeFi before. It's a fairly standard implementation where it literally is what it sounds. It's a factory that mass produces financial contracts. So if you imagine contractual templates such as an options contract or a perpetual pool contract, which we've recently created, you can install those contracts into the Tracer factory, and then anybody can then deploy a new market. So if you've got an Oracle price feed for that water market, let's say, you can plug that into the Tracer factory, press the factory button, then there's a conveyor belt template which rolls out of the factory, a new financial contract that anyone with an internet connection can connect to.
Okay, I want to drill down on this point because this point is really, really cool. And this might actually be a good learning lesson for people that don't actually know that UNISWAP is actually not one single exchange. UNISWAP has, like Patrick is saying, a factory contract where you can go and make a UNISWAP exchange. And that is a UNISWAP exchange, but it's only between those two assets. And it's not actually necessarily connected to the rest of the Uniswap contracts because it's one of many, many contracts. So somebody comes and they press the mint exchange button using the Uniswap factory, and then boom, a new Uniswap market is born. Patrick, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying like you guys want to create similar infrastructure where you said you loaded up a template, right? Like somebody initializes a contract template into the TracerDAO, and then that allows people to come and just bring the missing components of what is necessary to make a financial contract. And once they do bring those things, then you have a financial product, right? And so you have the financial contract factory, you press mint, you have a new financial contract, then you bring in maybe like an Oracle and like two assets and maybe some other missing pieces. And then boom, we have some sort of financial product that's based off of an Oracle and the assets that are involved with this financial contract, which you guys are talking about like managing risk. And then you also told a story about trying to manage risk about in like the legacy world about like something maybe along the lines of commodities. So I'm getting a lot of Chicago Mercantile Exchange type products and services. That was all a lot at once, but that was a decent, in my mind, a decent recap. Anything you want to add or change to that, Patrick?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a good mental model you've sort of built up there with the factory. In my mind, think about it sort of, you've got a lineage tree. If you imagine a family tree in a sense, you've got the factory that can then, it has its factory templates there. And from that factory template, you can mint different financial markets, as you were saying, from that template. And they're all sort of connected to TracerDAO in a sense. How a new market is added to the factory is purely through DAO governance. So TracerDAO token holders, governance right holders, they can vote on the specifications of the financial contract. So previously in the legacy traditional financial system, a lot of these financial contracts are regulatory kept in a sense. They're highly bureaucratic in how they're
highly
updated and upgraded through ISDA style of agreements. And in many senses, a lot of the agreements are sort of closed source. Where obviously decentralized finance and DAO governance can really uproot this and create an entirely new paradigm is through enabling governance right token holders to govern the way that they trade, to vote on certain parameters that are held within those contracts to upgrade them. So that's sort of an incredible facet of TracerDAO and decentralized finance generally that we're really excited about.
Yeah, I think the important property to parse out here is that when you load up these templates and what you are doing is you're reducing the costs of making a financial market really, really, really low. And if there's one thing that DeFi does really, really, really well, it is reducing the costs of executing financial logic. And TracerDAO is trying to make the cost of bootstrapping new financial markets reduce that cost to like the absolute minimum, because that's how we see in DeFi how innovation explodes is we've brought costs down to an absolute minimum.
That's right. So you're seeing that Cambrian explosion of financial markets, which is absolutely incredible. And as more and more oracles come into the market as well, Oracle price feeds through Chainlink, you're going to see more connections to these real-world commodities, real-world equities, real-world real estate. And you're starting to see these markets really seep into just the day-to-day. We're not, even though it's so exciting to be living within this DeFi environment and trading CryptoPunks and all these digital pieces, the true power of this technology is in the lower transaction costs, as you've highlighted, the minimized counterparty risk. You can compute risk within the system so simply and so easily, and this infrastructure is going to be applied to every single market in the world.
Okay, so you guys have said that because you're now in the world of DeFi, you started trying to offer risk tools towards like TradFi, legacy financial tools like commodities, but then you discovered decentralized finance, said that, hey, this platform makes a lot of sense, but you guys have smartly, in my mind, started with actual DeFi assets, right? Like BTC, ETH, like USDC trading. And that makes sense because like that's where the consumers are. But the idea is to probably expand out from there. Maybe next step is to NFTs, but then ultimately return back to the real world, like you said, with water or real estate or other sorts of commodities. And hopefully that's just like where this whole DeFi thing eventually leads to, right? Is that the idea?
Yeah, well, that's certainly where it's going to be leading, and that's certainly the idea. And that's right. We've started off with Bitcoin and Ethereum USDC markets initially on Perpetual Pools. You can go on there now and mint a long or short 1x or 3x Perpetual Pool token. The leverage will be increased eventually. So feel free to go on and check that out. But in the coming month or two, we are really excited about offering a NFT indices as well, getting more granular into CryptoPunks, for example, so that you can, rather than having to require all of the capital to purchase a punk, which certainly not everyone has, you can purchase a fraction of a punk through utilizing a derivative contract on Tracer. So we're really excited to be bringing this to the market quite soon. And I think the bridge between decentralized finance and NFTs is sort of happening at the moment. We're seeing it in the market. But I think Perpetual Pools and Tracer particularly will be able to stamp ourselves as one of the pioneers here.
I think that a use case that I can already imagine is that there is a punk that I want personally, but it's not for sale. And so I want, in theory, I could use a punk derivatives market to hedge my risk against never ever getting the punk that I can't buy today because it's not on for sale, but I can at least get exposure to it. And by using a punk derivatives market, perhaps by TracerDAO, and then I can buy into that in order to get enough exposure. And then when the day comes where the punk that I want actually does come on for sale, I've been following the value of that punk ever since I bought into the punk derivatives market on TracerDAO. And so I will always have the price exposure exposure risk reduced by having some sort of price feed towards a punk, right?
Exactly, especially with Perpetual Pools, you just mint that, whether it be long token of that punk indices that you want to gain exposure to, and you can then perpetually hold that in your wallet for as long as you want. So that's certainly something that we're very excited about.
Okay, let's go into in more detail the Perpetual Pools. Can you maybe compare and contrast previous perpetual products or current perpetual products that are on DeFi and how Perpetual Pools are actually different and unique in relation to them?
Sure. So perpetual swaps were obviously the pioneer of this, the similar form of derivative. You had BitMEX and Arthur Hayes find out this incredible mechanism where you have a supply being matched with demand through what's called a funding rate mechanism. So you've basically got an incentive to take the side of the position, whether it be the long side or the short side, that is less in demand. So it's an incredible derivative type that enables leverage and for people to be matched in a supply and demand function. Where I think there's been incredible adoption with these perpetual swap products, and there's obviously, we've seen, as in the traditional derivatives market, the derivatives for cryptocurrency, the volume completely outweigh the spot volumes. But where I think that DeFi has taken, let's just go to Uniswap, for example, just simple ERC20 transactions, is it's slightly reimagining the way that we transact these traditional financial instruments in a decentralized finance environment. So Uniswap completely reimagined the way that we just transact assets from one another. What I think perpetual swaps or perpetual pools does, that iterates on perpetual swaps, is it completely abstracts out a lot of the complicated pieces that are associated with derivatives trading. One of them is having a margin account. So you've got to deposit funds into this sub account that then you have to trade into different markets, and you've got to maintain your margin. Obviously, with maintaining your margin comes with a liquidation piece. So there's a risk that if the price goes above a certain mark or below a certain mark, depending on whether you've taken a long or a short position in trading derivatives, you can get liquidated and you can no longer have exposure to that market. So where Perpetual Pools has innovated on is we've abstracted out the margin account piece. We've abstracted out the liquidation piece. So anybody now, they can come in and mint their beliefs, whether it be short or long, leverage exposure, and they can then hold that perpetually in their wallet and utilize it within the DeFi economy. So we think that this is somewhat of a next step for perpetual products because it's such a simple user experience.
So the theme that I'm seeing here is that you've been able to, and DeFi, I recently wrote an article on the Bankless newsletter that was about how DeFi and Ether itself is on a march towards capital efficiency. Like Uniswap V2 is a capitally efficient improvement on V1, V3 is the same on V2. Every new upgrade that DeFi gets, it seems to be in the direction of more and more capital efficiency. And so the theme that I'm seeing here is that there was these perpetual swaps. There was clear product market fit for them. They were generally only served in a centralized manner, or at least adopted in a centralized fashion. But now with perpetual pools, we've been able to change some things, and now we've been able to actually reduce you can still have leverage exposure, but without having the margin account, right? So you don't have to deposit money. You don't have to hold a balance with a service provider who is providing you a perpetual swap. Now, instead, there is a perpetual pool, which doesn't take margin. You just actually buy the asset. And the asset is this, facilitates more or less the same product, same service that a perpetual swap does, but now it does it in a pool form. And when you say perpetual pools, and you also talk about Uniswap, I would get a feeling that there's like a place where you actually deposit your, like with LPs on Uniswap, you actually deposit your money into a pool. Can you elaborate on that part and how that works and how that's new?
Sure thing. So you've got one perpetual pool. Let's say it's a BTC USDC 3x pool. So you've got a short side of the pool and you've got a long side of the pool. Somebody can come in and deposit USDC, which is the collateral that will transition from one side of the pool to the other side of the pool. You can come in and deposit USDC into the short side, and then you've minted a 3x BTC USDC short token. So you then have an incentive for somebody to deposit into the long side now that there's collateral sitting in the short side. So every period you then have a rebalancing event, which is triggered by an Oracle update. So there's a BTC USDC price update that then will trigger collateral to be traded from one side of the perpetual pool to the other side of the perpetual pool. So the person who's minted the short token after the Oracle update, their tokens will now be worth less, if that makes sense.
And then let's go into the oracles. How does the oracle work with TracerDAO? Where does that data come from?
So right now we're sourcing all Oracle data from Chainlink. They've been a very strong partner for us over time, and our roots are deeply within the Chainlink network as well, being one of the oracles in a previous life, and continue to support that network as well. So primarily all of the data is coming from Chainlink.
Is there any like a roadmap to do any in-house Oracle work or pull Oracle data from anywhere else?
I think that there's certainly a lot of interesting markets that are going to be emerging within decentralized finance that may be able to be utilized that Chainlink may not quickly move into. So it's certainly an area that we're looking at, but I think right now, in terms of the security and the benefits and simple ease of use, Chainlink are servicing a great purpose.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the show thus far. In the second half of this Meet the Nation, I talk about the Genesis story, I ask about the Genesis story of TracerDAO, how it came to be. And then also I asked my most favorite question for all of these Meet the Nations is, if in a world where TracerDAO is maximally successful, what does that look like for TracerDAO? What does that look like for DeFi? What does that look like for the world? So those conversations are coming up next. But first, a moment to talk about some of these fantastic sponsors that make the show possible. The AAVE protocol is a decentralized liquidity protocol on Ethereum, which allows users to supply and borrow certain crypto assets. AAVE version 2 has a ton of cool features that makes using the AAVE protocol even more powerful. With AAVE, you can leverage the full power of DeFi money Legos, yield, and composability all in one application. On AAVE, there are a ton of assets that you can supply to the protocol in order to gain yield, and all of those same assets can also be borrowed from the protocol if you have supplied collateral. Here you can see me borrowing 200 USDC against my portfolio of a number of different DeFi tokens in ETH. I'll choose a variable interest rate because it's a lower rate than the stable interest rate option, but I could choose the stable interest rate option if I wanted to lock in that interest rate in permanently. V2 also features the ability for users to swap collateral without having to withdraw their assets, trade them on Uniswap, and then deposit them back into AAVE. With AAVE, users can do this in one seamless transaction, saving you time and gas costs. Check out the power of AAVE at aave.com. That's AAVE.com. Gemini is the world's most trusted cryptocurrency exchange. I've been a customer of Gemini since I first got into crypto in 2017, and it's been my main exchange of choice to make my crypto buys and sells. Gemini is available in all 50 states and in over 50 countries worldwide, and on Gemini there are markets for over 30 various different crypto assets, including many of the hot DeFi tokens, and it's one of the few exchanges that has liquid DAI markets. Gemini just launched their Earn program, where you can earn up to 7.4% interest on 26 various crypto assets. If you're tired of paying fees in DeFi, or you don't want to worry about DeFi exploits, but you still want to earn interest on your crypto assets, Gemini Earn is the product for you. Another product I'm stoked to get my hands on is the Gemini Crypto Back Credit Card, which gives you 3% cash back on all of your purchases, but paid to you in your preferred crypto asset. When I get my Gemini credit card, I'm going to make sure that I get my cash back in ETH. So whenever I buy something, I get a little bit of ETH bonus back to me at the same time. You can open up a free account in under 3 minutes at gemini.com/gobankless. And if you trade more than $100 within the first 30 days after sign up, you'll be gifted a free $15 Bitcoin bonus. Check them out at gemini.com/gobankless. All right, Patrick, let's go into the background of how TracerDAO actually came to be. Can you tell us the story of how the DAO actually formed and the humans behind it?
Sure. It's a pretty interesting Genesis story, actually. So around the start of 2021, this year, we had the DAO code written. So we'd written the DAO kernel is what we'd called it. And then we'd posted that to GitHub. So that was the TracerDAO kernel that had the Tracer token and an initial framework for the TracerDAO contracts and some of the voting pieces held within it.
Who's we though? Who's we?
So we are Mycelium, who are a core contributor to TracerDAO. Quite purposefully, we're one of the contributors, and we'd wish for many more contributors to join TracerDAO and build out Tracer in their own vision. But so we initially, Mycelium, we posted the TracerDAO code to GitHub, upon which the code was then deployed, and it was sent out into the ether. It was on Ethereum mainnet. There was then 100 international claimants that claimed from TracerDAO initially. So it was a DAO kernel, as I said, so it needed some input for somebody to start up the life of the DAO. So we told people that that we knew that we'd found this contract on Ethereum, and there's an ability to claim from the initial DAO contract. So Mycelium, we weren't any of the first 100 claimants. We told about 10 people who told about 10 other people, and we don't actually know who that initial 100 group of people are, or all of them anyway. Mycelium, we then put forward a proposal to be voted in by these 100 initial claimants who at that point had claimed 1% of the network to be vested over a 3-year period. We then put forward a proposal to help software develop TracerDAO over the next 3-year period as Mycelium. So we were then thankfully accepted by this initial group of 100, and in many senses, the rest is history. Since then, we've been working with many great partners and collaborators who, all through a DAO-governed process, have put forward proposals. Everything since the beginning, you can go back and see it on our discourse forums and Snapshot. All of the proposals are there. It's a pretty incredible story and journey to be a part of.
That is a pretty incredible bootstrapping story. It's like that's actually one of the few ways I've seen like decentralized Genesis actually work out. All you guys did was create some sort of initial set conditions, cast it off into Ethereum, told a few people about it, who told enough more people about it, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have your Genesis members who likely only accepted the invitation to be curious about TracerDAO if they were somehow inclined to be interested in TracerDAO in the first place, right? Like trying to have some emergent selection process as, well, the only people who are going to claim this initial stake are people who are going to actually be interested in building this thing out. And then boom, 100 members started, which the Mycelium Genesis team can't even actually track down or trace or know who they are. And so it's a very clever way to get decentralization on day one. I think that's pretty cool.
Yes.
Where did you guys have the idea from this? Did you guys create the idea yourself, or was this a model that you guys saw? Where did this idea come from?
Yeah, there was certainly a lot of brainstorming and ideation around it, and yeah, we'd definitely love to eventually meet those 100 people at some point along the way. But yeah, I think it was really important for us initially, as you just mentioned, to achieve that decentralization piece. And if we're doing a DAO, let's really try and do it right. There were a few months there where it took a while to actually get the DAO environment set up and rolling, and with that sacrifice a couple of months of building out the product, which is certainly a cost. But now we have an incredible foundation with respect to the DAO, the infrastructure, and moving forwards, we've got a great community behind us at the moment. We're really eager to continue to build that out.
So you guys initially started off with 100 people who claimed the initial claim. Has that number changed since then? Has any more people come into the DAO?
Yeah, so there's right now TCR governance rights being distributed to any user that is utilizing the perpetual pool contracts and staking long or short tokens in a yield earning contract. So since then, we've had hundreds of new governors join up, and we're certainly looking for more and more people to engage. Right now, it's a very just snapshot-centric voting process, but eventually in the next few months to 6 months, we're looking to transition into council-like setups, such that different groups of people can have different jurisdiction in terms of their decision-making. One thing that a lot of DAOs have struggled with that we've seen is just because of the slow bureaucratic process of lobbying many people around maybe what could be a very simple thing, there's needing to be these council formations where decisions that could be made on the fly have to be made. So for anyone that's looking to become a DAO politician or DAO governor and become actively engaged within Tracer, we are seeking that involvement. So I'd urge you to get involved in the Discord and discourse and start contributing.
What specific talent sets are you actually looking for? Are you guys looking for Solidity devs or community managers or like financial gurus? What's the ideal candidate look like?
Certainly all of the above in terms of skills and talent sets. But I think what really makes an incredible community is just somebody that cares and somebody that's in line with the vision of the project and shares a similar passion of creating more reliable financial infrastructure. So if you want to join the mission, I suppose that's probably the ideal candidate to be coming and helping out the TracerDAO. So long as you apply a bit of critical thought and thinking to the equation and have your own say, I think you're going to be an extremely valuable member of the community.
Yeah, and you guys are at the almost like the Genesis moment. If we extrapolate this out into the long-term future, this is kind of like the era in which TracerDAO will be bootstrapped. So Patrick, with that, I want to put on a bullish cap, or ask you to put on a bullish cap and say, like, if TracerDAO is maximally successful, what does TracerDAO look like in 5, 6, 7 years?
Sure, 5, 6, 7 years. If TracerDAO is maximally successful, and I think this is true of the decentralized financial industry generally, but we've consumed the majority of derivatives transaction volume in the world. I think, again, this infrastructure, Ethereum infrastructure, decentralized financial infrastructure, it will replace every single transaction, full stop. So that's inevitably one of the goals for TracerDAO, is to be supporting the majority of that volume. In terms of the benefits that you want to serve for people, I think the risk management piece is something that has really yet to hit the retail markets in many senses, or just markets generally. There's insurance brokers and the ability for people to manage their risk right now. But I think with decentralized finance and plugging into different neobanking applications, for example, people will now be able to budget in a much more reliable way. They'll be able to connect up to different pieces of programmable derivative infrastructure that enable you to gain insurance on your day-to-day consumption. Let's say of fuel prices. This is something we're really interested in at the moment, is if you go to the fuel station or you've got your neobanking application, you can purchase your next 3,000 litres or 3,000 gallons of fuel. So these different types of programmable markets and new markets is really where we want to hit with Tracer.
Awesome. Well, Patrick, as we come to a close here, are there any last requests of the Bankless community? Where should they go? Should they follow you guys on Twitter? Go to the Discord? What should they do?
Definitely jump in. So tracer.finance is where you'll find us. Go in and try and use the Perpetual Pools product. We're really eager on receiving some feedback at the moment as to how we can make that experience better. Mint a long or short position, whatever your market beliefs are, leveraged and maybe try and earn some TCR governance rights and start becoming a governor. That'd be an incredible call to action, I'd say.
Well, Patrick, thank you for coming on and introducing TracerDAO to the Bankless Nation.
Thanks very much, David. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head over to Bankless HQ right now to develop your crypto investing skills and learn how to free yourself from banks and gain your financial independence. We recommend joining our daily newsletter, podcast, and community as a Bankless Premium subscriber to get the most out of your Bankless experience. You'll get access to our market analysis, our alpha leaks, and exclusive content, and even the Bankless token for airdrops, raffles, and unlocks. If you're interested in crypto, the Bankless community is where you want to be. Click the link in the description to become a Bankless Premium subscriber today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for in-depth interviews with industry leaders, Ask Me Anythings, and weekly roll-ups where we summarize the week in crypto and other fantastic content. Thanks everyone for watching and being on the journey as we build out the Bankless Nation.